This podcast was created as a part of Podcast Lab by India Film Project in association with Anchor by Spotify.
There really isn't one thing that I could say fully describes what writing or creativity means to me. But what does come to mind is the riddle by the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland. Why is a raven like a writing desk? And to me, what it means is those soaring feel grounded by the very thoughts they could produce to last forever. And that's what writing feels like to me. It's like I wandered the edges of reality, almost lost consciousness, and then suddenly shifted back to reality once pen hit the paper. Or more realistically, when my fingers hit the phone pad. I should say I started writing when I got lost in heartbreak and love, but the truth is I was 10 years old and scribbled on and on about a lake monster who protected a great treasure. And through all my grammatical and spelling errors, bad syntax, and an absolutely horrendous handwriting, I found a sense of permanently inscribing my imagination. Maybe through the years my thoughts are less innocent, but it's always a good reminder that once was a child who truly understood why a raven is like a writing desk. And that essentially has been my storytelling and creative journey. It's just constantly trying to find that raven who will be my writing desk.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. I'm your host Sangeeta, aka the Moody Marshmallow. You just heard our guest for today, Megha Vasudevan, talk about what writing means to her. Megha is a creative consultant with a background in electronic media and design. She's previously worked as a copywriter and a social media manager. Today, she's pursuing a master's in marketing from the University of Technology, Sydney, and she's working on building her own brand. Join me as I talk to her about some of her favorite stories, her growth as a writer, creative burnout, embracing her sexuality, and more. So welcome to the first episode of the Closet Writer Chronicles. Today I have with me Megha Vasudevan. So first off, welcome to the show, Megha. Thank you so much for being here today and for always being the first person on all my ideas. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me and for thinking of me first when you decide to do all these creative things, which honestly I could never in a million years ever think of to do myself. And this is really fun. I've been wanting to do a podcast with a lot of people for a long time, but it's always one of those, oh, we have this idea, and then it just never goes anywhere. So this is super fun.
Thank you for being here. So I think jumping just right in, talking about writing and creativity. So I know in the snippet where you were talking about what writing means to you, you did mention the quote from Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll. Amazing story. Yeah. It's a story I've grown up with and I really enjoy and love. And, it got me thinking, what are possibly some of the stories that have impacted you, as a writer, as a creator? What are some of the stories that have really stayed with you? Because I know for me, Alice in Wonderland was definitely one of them. Enjoyed the book, enjoyed the adaptations, live action, animation, everything. So I'm assuming that might be one of the things that stayed with you. If not, I'd love to know the rest. What are the other stories that have stayed with you?
Honestly, story-wise, I was one of those kids who was like super into comic books for the longest time. I used to have like the biggest stack of like Tinkle comic books. Till one day, like my sister just got so fed up with because my sister is like the big novel head in our family. She's the big bookworm. And she just got so sick of me reading these comics and assuming that they were like the greatest pieces of ingenious writing ever. And so she gave me a copy of a Goosebumps book. It's the R.L. Stine Goosebumps book that she had because she used to collect those. So she gave me that and she was just like, I promise you, just sit, just like try this, just like go for it. And I did. I sat and it took me a while. Like, it took me a couple of tries to like get off the starting block and actually read something that didn't have pictures attached to it. But once I did, I genuinely loved it. And then I read through her entire collection of Goosebumps. And I went out and picked up a book. The first book I ever picked up was a novel. It was Dracula by Bram Stoker.
Oh,
And
wow.
I genuinely, like, the first time I read that book, it's like Goosebumps is quite fine when you're sitting and reading it by yourself. But when I picked up Dracula and I was reading it, I was actually home alone at the time. My mom was like walking, she was like having exercise in the apartment complex. And I got so terrified by the book that I actually had to stop reading it and go down and stand with my mom. And she's just like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, I got scared. And like that like blew my mind how just
Wow.
like words on a piece of paper would scare me to the point where I couldn't sit in the house by myself. And then from then on, it just went. I was just like, I was so fascinated by how like just these words on papers became pictures in your head, and it immersed you so much into like the story. And I loved that about books. And like, so that's what it started. Like, I started reading more. I obviously fell in love with the horror genre more than anything else. Like, so that's, I just kept on buying a lot more horror books. I really heavily went into like Stephen King. And then later on, when I could read like more like advanced literature, I picked up like H.P. Lovecraft and things like that. And I started reading those books and I just fell in love. Like, and then I think at some point as a book reader, you eventually get to the point where you're like, I can read this. What if I could write it? And then that's where that started. That's where I started thinking like, okay, I could read, if I can read these things and I have an understanding of the literature, I could attempt to start writing it. So that's where I initially started. That's how that happened.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Completely resonate with Tinkle comics. I used to hoard those as a kid. I think even my mother had like enough of me because I would just go into this one bookstore and kind of just pick up comics every other week. And I'd be like, oh, the new edition's out this month. Let me go get it. And I
Yeah.
think my mother just had enough of me, but
It was
completely
like Tinkle
resonate.
or Archie or something or the other. It
Yeah.
was
Oh
like
my
all
God. Yeah.
those like like the double digest books. Like, oh, I still love reading those. Those are like classics, but like obviously.
Yeah, childhood memories, nostalgia for sure. Um, I could never get into horror. Extremely scared. I am a scaredy cat. I cannot watch horror films, cannot read horror books. I tried reading one Goosebumps book, did not work for me. So clearly not my cup of tea. But no, that's super interesting to know that, how books kind of got you into that whole thought process of, hey,
Mhm.
I enjoy reading these so much. What if actually, try to start and writing? And that kind of
Yeah.
brings me to my next question of, what is, your earliest memory of, being creative or actually having started writing? What
Oh.
what is your earliest memory of that?
Oh my gosh, listen, I hardly remember things that happened like last week. But no, I had to think of like if I genuinely have to think, it's like I think I had mentioned this in like my what I had said, what creating means to me. It was just like the story, and I vaguely remember this. So my dad had this incentive to get me and my siblings to be more creative, where he just like, oh, I'll give you 10 rupees if you draw something or if you create something. So I took that as like the biggest, like, I was just like, I'm going to start like drawing random pictures of suns and two mountains, and he
Oh
paid me
my
10
God.
bucks for it. And that worked for a while till he realized and he caught on to the scam, and he's like, no, okay, you're gonna have to do more than this. Like, you can't just get away with this stuff anymore. And he's just like honestly, just let stuff flow. And then I remember I had actually drawn a photo of this lake with like this Loch Ness monster-esque thing coming out of it. And on the back of that drawing, I started writing the story. And I got so into the story of like this lake monster. And like, I don't know, I just vaguely remember that there was like some treasure that it was protecting, and all these villagers were like trying to harass it. I'm always on the monster side, to be honest. So uh, I ended up writing it like just on the back of that drawing, thinking like, okay, like I'm gonna get more money for this. But then I got so into the story that I had to take like more A4 sheets of paper and like continue writing. So I wrote like some 5-page short story, um,
Wow.
and then handed it to my dad, and he gave me like I think he gave me like, I think 500 rupees, and I had never seen that kind of money before. I'm getting so much money for this. And I didn't really write anything as big as that after. Like I went back to like drawing and stuff like that because I realized how much of a thought process goes into actually writing a story. And I was just like so in the moment. But that, to me, as far as I can remember, that is my earliest memory of something that I had written.
No, that's
Wild.
amazing that you started out with, I mean, just the fact that you wrote short stories, I think is so cool. That's something I've actually very recently started doing because I predominantly used to write poetry, and I've just very recently gotten into short story writing. But I think it's amazing that you started out with that, because just the kind of imagination and thought process you need to even build a world, build characters, build plot is just...
Oh no, but like you shouldn't take it as too much. I'm pretty sure most of it was just like he said, she said, like five word sentences. Like it wasn't any piece of like high grade literature or anything. It was like a children's book pretty much. And I was a child and I was writing it. And that's all you could really expect from that.
I mean, it's a start, so that's great. It's amazing you did that nonetheless. But yeah, just talking about, creativity and writing. So I know design is something that you do. And, just coming to the whole design and, writing aspect, and just the fact that you're a creative professional. And this is something I'm very curious about. And I usually talk to with a lot of, creatives about, is that, the fact that you do something you love so much as a profession, and you also derive a lot of joy out of it when you do it for yourself personally. Is there ever a point where you experience burnout, or you fear that risk of burnout? And, what do you do to kind of stay sane and still, love what you do? Because it can get quite mundane, I would imagine, that when you do something you love so much as a 9-to-5 job, essentially, almost. So, what do you do?
Oh, no, for sure. Like, honestly, I'm actually going through a creative burnout right now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like, as we're recording this. I think it's just like one of those things, like, as you said, it's like something you do every single day. And then all of a sudden one day you're just like, well, now it's like a job. It's no longer something. It's like when it was a hobby, it was like something that you like step out of your regular brain and step into this creative aspect. But then when you're a creative person, you're like always have to be creative. And then you're just like, well, what if today I don't want to be? And I think that's pretty much it. It's just like today I don't want to be creative. But it's not that I don't want to be creative in the sense that I don't want to create anything. It's I don't want to be creative in the sense like I don't want to do stuff that I am supposed to do when it comes to creating. So usually what I do when it comes to stuff is like I have a lot of other creative hobbies that I don't like make money on. Like I like painting. I like illustrate stuff on my iPad. Like I do write, and I don't really get paid for writing. The only thing I really get paid for is graphic design. So all these other little creative hobbies I have, I don't get paid for. And then that makes it like, they're still my hobbies. It's still something that I fall back on. So I do stuff like that. Oh, I recently picked up tarot card and I do tarot readings sometimes, and they're all for fun. So it's just like anything that's gonna push my mind out of whatever it is that I'm going through. And then I just go through the list of all those things and I'm like, okay, how many of these things can I do before I get like a creative stroke of genius and go back to my design and think, okay, so like I can do that. So I can think of an example. Like recently I was just like scrolling through Facebook and I was going through one of these like really like low creative days, and I saw somebody had written like a prompt on a idea for like a bookstore that was also like a bar. So like instead of like those cafes that are also bookstores and you just go and you pick up a book off a shelf and you sit and read, but instead of that you go up to the counter, you order your drink, and they give you a book to go with that drink that's based on the drink. So you're drinking this specific thing and then you're reading a book based on that drink. And then I sat and looked at that prompt for like all of 10 minutes. And then I had already come up with a logo for it. I had come up with a design for the cafe. I like done like so much. I'd done like a lot of things. And then I realized like that's all it took. I'm just like, yes, it was somebody else's idea. But at the end of the day, it was just like, oh, like so many creative things out there that you can just look at. And that's what prompts are also for. Like if you're honestly in a creative burnout, just look at a prompt and be like, okay, cool, I can pick up on this. I can, expand this. And that's what I did. I mean, I haven't made the logo yet. It's still like an idea in my head, and it's like a name and everything in my head, but super fun stuff. And like, if you're going through creative burnout, I would honestly just suggest like do everything else except what you're supposed to be doing, and eventually you'll get to like relate this back to what I'm supposed to be doing and use it.
No, that's so true. And I relate to that because I know at one point what happened was even when I started working with like a literary services agency, and essentially you had to write and sort of be creative every day. And that can really burn you out. And I had to do that on the job, but also it was, I think, during April because it was Global Poetry Writing Month. And I decided to take up the challenge because that's something I do personally. And I realized I couldn't keep up because it was just too much of creative stamina that was being, pulled out from me. And I was like, I really need a break. I unfortunately couldn't complete the challenge this year, but I knew I had to kind of take a step back and sort of give myself that kind of rest, my brain, that break from being creative, so to speak. And I agree. Breaks completely help. If you're someone who is creative and you're creative for a good amount of time, take breaks. There is no glory in tiring and exhausting yourself out in trying to be creative.
And I like to think of like that one thing where like people say like it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And that's exactly what life is like. Like, forget being creative. Like, you just need to stop thinking that, oh, I need to get this done. Like, yes, obviously if you're like on a deadline for your job, then yes, you need to get it done tomorrow. But in every other instance, it's just like, bro, like just take it easy, like just calm down. Like, you've got like so many more years left in life. You don't need to get everything done within the next 2 days. Like, it can take time. Like, it's fine.
Yeah, that is so true. I think basically people stop being hard on yourselves. Easier said than done, I know, but hey, we can try. We can try.
Yes, that's all we aspire to, is to just try to like take a chill pill once in a while.
For sure.
And especially like with lockdown and everything, I think this is like an enforced chill pill. Like, because because I'm still in lockdown. So this is my enforced chill pill. It's just like, you can't go anywhere else. So like, might as well just relax.
So I mean, the fact that you mentioned, lockdown, I know you've been in Sydney since 2020, just before the world kind of shut down. And I know you haven't had a chance to really, come back home for quite a while. And I'm just wondering how that is for you, because I know there are so many students and professionals out there, who unfortunately had to kind of stay away from home for whatever reasons and haven't really been able to go back home and, sort of see their families or, see their loved ones. So, what has that been like for you? How are you coping?
Honestly, I don't think I'm coping. I would say I am surviving-ish. Slowly holding on to my sanity day by day by a thread. But no, it's not all doom and gloom. Like, honestly, I've got some really good friends over here in Sydney who've also been helping we all keep each other sane. In terms of not being able to see my family, it does suck. But at the end of the day, like, so grateful for stuff like Zoom and things like that. And we as in my family, we do this thing where every Sunday we get on a call. Like,
nice.
Compulsorily, we get on a call every Sunday evening and we all like update each other on our week and just like have a little chit chat, like have some like fun banter going on. And it honestly helps. It keeps you grounded, because it's just like, okay, they're like 9,000 how many ever kilometers away, but like they're still there. They're right there for you to reach. And that's what like social media and social networking was all about when it was first introduced. It was just like, okay, you can reach everybody at like the tap of a button. And that has helped a lot, because it's like, that they're right there. Like, you can't see them physically, but they're right there. And for now, like, you're just gonna have to deal with that. Like, for me, it's just like, I am focusing on finishing my degree here. And once that's done, like, who knows, right? But that's what I came here to do. And as
Mm.
hard as it was to not see my family during this time, it was just like, yeah, you came here to do something, so you got to do it. You got to see it through. And then
Right.
at the end of it, your reward will be eventually you will get to see your family. It's not like I'm never going to see them again. It's just going to be a little longer. And honestly, but eventually you do get to see them. And that's like the light at the end of the tunnel. And you just got to keep that mentality in mind. Like, it's not like, yes, maybe in dire situations, something could happen, but there's no point in thinking that negatively, right? So you just got to keep positive, just be like, yeah, they're there, you talk to them every other day, and eventually you get to see them again. And that's just, they're all there cheering you on, and they also know why you're here. So that's all you got to really hold on to.
That quote, the light at the end of the tunnel, I think it's something my parents and I keep saying each other, and we've been constantly saying this to each other during the entire lockdown. It's like, we're just in a really dark tunnel. We will get to the light soon enough. And yeah, hopefully
Yeah.
we will. I mean, things are getting better. People are getting vaccinated. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, the world will open out soon and
Yeah.
we will all be able to see each other. And hopefully we can do this in person at some point.
Yes, definitely. Looking forward to all those things.
So coming back to, writing and design, two very different things, so to say. But I want to know, do you think there's any kind of interrelation or, between design and writing, or how different or similar are there according to you?
Honestly, design is visual, it's pictorial, and writing is obviously writing. You're like alphabetical. I don't know what the other word for aside from pictorial is. I'm really dumb. Anyway, but no, it's like the processes are the same. It's just the way you're creating it is different. When you're designing something, you're creating the final image. But when you're writing something, you're writing what you think the image looks like, and it's up to every single reader to interpret that image differently.
Right.
So it's technically the same thing. So even when you're designing, you get a brief, right? You get a design brief, and how you interpret that brief is how the final picture comes out.
Right.
And when you're writing, you come up with your own story, and then the audience, the reader, comes up with what that final picture looks like. I think that they're very similar in that sense, which is why it's always like really fun to me. Like, even when I do my paintings, or even when I do like abstract designs, and then I go to someone and be like, oh, what does this look like to you? And then like 4 people will say 4 different things. And it's the same with the story. Someone will read one line of the story, like if the author mentioned, like, I remember this because my English classes, the author mentioned that the curtains were blue, and like 4 people will say 4 different things, like, oh, he was depressed, or like, like he was in like a melancholy feeling, and then one person will be like, maybe the curtains were just blue. Like that, and that's all it is. It's as simple as that. It's just however you interpret this thing. So I find it really cool to be on both sides of the spectrum, to be able to read things and interpret them, to be able to write things and have other people interpret them, and then to be able to design things and then have people just look at my interpretation of what I designed. So it's just like this consistent circle of interpretation and what people view the world as, and it's just amazing to like look at from like everybody's perspective.
No, that's very true. And I agree. In fact, this is something I personally practice. So usually whenever I put out a piece of writing, I never explain it. I just put it out and I keep it open for interpretation, because it's like you said, every single person has a very different perspective. People look at things differently. And it's interesting to see what they kind of take from it, because sometimes it's really not what you thought, what you imagined. You must have thought about it as something else, and they kind of come out with a completely different meaning or overview of it altogether. And I think that's the beauty of art, right? Of any form of creative expression, that anyone can really take anything from it. And
exactly.
that's incredible. And yeah, I know you've been writing since you were 10 years old. How much do you think you've grown from that 10-year-old writer to now?
I definitely have learned to use bigger words since I was 10 years
That's
old.
A big one.
That's a big one. I know what syntax is now, although I still don't really know how to use it properly. But I think the biggest difference from how I used to write as a kid to how I write now, I think for me, it's like how differently you view the world as a kid. As a kid, everything is like rainbows and dragons and monsters and treasures. And as an adult, now all of the stuff I write is like, to be quite frank, it's very depressing.
Oh,
And but like, yeah, I think that's like the biggest, it's not really growth, it's just like the biggest change of view that I've seen from when I was a kid to now. It's just like everything now is just like I look at everything with like the glass half empty. I'm a very pessimistic person, but I'm not really pessimistic. I'm realistic, right?
right.
So that's what I do in my writing. I write very realistically. I'm just like, listen, like if it sucks, then it sucks. And that I'm very frank about that. But as a kid, you always want to look at the brighter side of things. And I think that was like, it was very interesting to me to notice that difference from how I used to write and how I have started writing now. It's just like, yeah, it's I don't know if I should be depressed by it, but it's definitely eye-opening.
But yeah, I think the other thing with storytelling and writing, I know that you and your sister are actually building a brand related to merchandising and storytelling. And I think you guys have been working on this for, I think, more than a year now, if I'm right.
Way too long, to be
Okay.
honest. Way way too long. We're very delayed in a lot of things, but no,
Okay.
yeah, I'm super excited about it. So technically I haven't spoken about it like openly, I think, aside from a couple of surveys that I had sent out to get some market research done. But the brand is basically, if I could like put it in like very, very simplistic terms, it's like, when Disney releases a movie and they have these characters and then they do merchandise after that. The
Right.
merchandising is one of their forms of revenue. So we took that business model and we basically flipped the script where like we'll release the characters and the merchandise and the stories will follow. So we're building lore of all these characters and eventually releasing like tidbits of stories and things, and then hopefully that'll lead to like either a game or like a book or something further along down the line. So all the characters are made by us, they're all unique 100%. All the characters are made by us. The store itself is built into the lore, like the store, and we have like this, I shouldn't say that, that's spoilers. No, so yeah, but that's pretty much what we're doing. Like we flipped the script on Disney and we decided like, okay, we're gonna make all of our own characters, create unique merchandise for them, and then release lore little by little. So the kind of audience that we're looking at is like people who love D&D and stuff like that, where they do a lot of character building, people who generally love like fantasy sci-fi based things. And yeah, so it's super cool. All of the products are also designed by us, like the characters and animations and everything. I mean, not animations, the characters and all the little bits and bobs that go with the characters are all designed by us. And we're like a team of like 4 people at this point, which is why it's probably taking so long, because we took it a bit step too far and we decided on this really big business idea, but there's not many of us, so that's why it's taken so long to get off the ground. But now I'm super excited. Hope we, fingers crossed, should be releasing this year, but we never know, like with COVID lockdown and everything. Like I think even like the main business is based in Bangalore, so I think even Bangalore is going through a lot of COVID lockdowns and stuff like that. So we've had like a bit of like hiccups and snags because of that. So that's why it's been taking a while. But yeah, I'm, as I keep saying, super excited.
No, but that's amazing. That's incredible. I can't wait to see what you guys come out with, and can't wait to get some merchandise. But I think also, we spoke about, creativity and writing, and, that's definitely one part of your individuality or identity, so to speak. But I guess to do a little more deep dive into the whole identity concept. Last year you came out as being pansexual, I think during Pride Month or a little after that. What can you tell us about your journey on embracing, your sexuality and, kind of coming out? The reason I'm asking this is because there aren't many narratives on, gender and sexuality, especially in South Asia, especially now that you have other parts of the spectrum, like being non-binary or asexual, or as in your case, pansexual. So, what can you tell us about your journey about that?
To be quite honest, like Pansexual is just like, because like when I looked it up online, that was the word that made the most sense. But at the end of the day, it's still a label. It's not, I wouldn't say I 100% identify as pansexual, but I wouldn't 100% identify with probably any label in general. The way I see things is like, I don't look at stuff like gender and gender identity and otherwise genetics, whatever you want to call it. I don't look at all of that when it comes to who I find attractive. For me, it's just like, okay, do I vibe with you? And then that's all that matters. Everything else is like a moot point. And like coming out last year, it was just like on my social media, and I didn't realize it was like such a big thing. It was just like one of those things where I was just like, yeah, like might as well. But I had actually come out to my parents and my friends like a couple of years before that, where it was just like a very casual conversation. Like I came out to my dad and he was tipsy. I'm going to be quite honest, because I was afraid of telling him sober. But he just looked at me and he was just like, Megha, as long as you're healthy and happy, then it's fine. And like that was like wild to me. Like I had heard all these like horror stories, especially because like I don't want to stereotype because it's India and like you just never know. And then the same thing, I came out to my mom and she pretty much also like just accepted me like straight off the bat, like didn't really do anything. And then I think it seemed to me like they all kind of knew, but at the same time they didn't know what it was, and I didn't really know what it was. And there are days where I still don't really know what it is. Like that's why I just see it as, I'm not looking at you because of your gender, and I'm not looking at you because of your gender identity. I'm just looking at you because I want to. And that's pretty much all it is to me. So like, coming out as pansexual was really just like content. It was just like, okay, it's Pride Month, let's just post something. And then pansexual was the word that I most related with. But like again, like I said, like it is, at the end of the day, it was just a label to me, and it didn't, there's like so many other labels that I think I like. Bisexual is there. I think demisexual is one that I kind of sort of identify with. So yeah, so I think with how everything goes, like as you said, there's just like so many more labels now. The way I like to tell people, the way I see it is, if you want to identify with a label, then like go for it. If you think that's gonna help you be happier as a person, like go for it if that's what it takes. But I also think that you need to look inside and decide if you're happy with who you are as a person. Then the label is not gonna make a difference. Like if you're happy as who you are, what you're doing, who you love, who you don't love, then that's all that matters. Like the label is literally just for if someone asks you and you feel obligated to answer, then do it. But if it's just for yourself, then you just need to be happy with that, whoever that person is.
No, that's amazing. And I mean, more power to you, for embracing yourself and kind of coming out. And these conversations are important, which is why I wanted to, talk to you about this, because it's difficult for a lot of people to come out and kind of, talk about this and say that, hey, this is what I identify as. Because like you said, unfortunately, in South Asia, there is a lot of, stereotyping, or there's not much of an understanding, which is why it's important to hear from, people from the community who identify as, whatever it is that they identify as. It's important to listen to those narratives. So I'm very happy that you, spoke about this today. Last couple of questions. So first off, what are your creative aspirations at this point? I know one is the merchandising brand that you are definitely looking at, but, apart from that, is there anything else you're looking at? Is there anything that you're looking forward to in the near or distant future?
Honestly, I'm one of those people that's just like a take it as it comes kind of person. So for me, it's just like my creative aspirations are, I would love to have my own brand, like entirely me, all my own designs, all my own thought processes, my entire business model. So like this one that I'm doing with my sister, that's like a stepping stone towards my own brand. So that's like the end goal for me. Like I would love to have my own brand, my own, like ideally would love to have my own design studio where I'm creating for other people as well, because I love doing it. I love listening to client briefs. Like as much as people hate it, there's like this odd, I don't know if I should say it, but this is really sadistic part of me that's just like, oh, I love it, give me more problems, let me solve them. But yeah, I'm that kind of person. I'm just like,
in terms of aspirations, yes, ideally that's what I would like to do. But honestly, even if none of that stuff works out, as long as I get to keep creating and creating freely, like how I do right now, I'd be the happiest person. Like, honestly, I would love to just keep doing what I'm doing. Like, obviously, I'd love to be paid a bit more to do it, but I would just love to keep doing this. I love doing this. It's the most amazing job ever, to create something and then give it to somebody and see the look on their face and realize that you did that. You made that for that person. And then that person gets to share their dream with all these other people. And you made that, you were a little part of it because you made that happen. You created the logo, or you made their business card, or you did something for them, and you're part of their dream right now. And that's just like, that's the way I see it. That's how I look at things.
No, that's amazing, man. More power to you. And they say that, the sign of any good creator is when they kind of accept more challenges, when more challenges come your way, and that excites you because that's something new to do. That's something for you to kind of, play around with and see what you can come out with. So I think it's great that, you have that view, I think. And that's why you design so amazingly well. I've had the good fortune of working with you, and I know how amazing you are. And I cannot wait to see all the incredible things you come out with. I really can't. But yeah, I think just coming to our last question of this episode, of this interview.
It's all over now.
What is a piece of advice or learning, something you've learned in life you'd like to share with people? It could be creative or just, a life lesson you've sort of learned in general. What is something you'd like to share with people?
Oh gosh, I think I've sprinkled a little of those like all throughout this entire interview. But if I could give one big thing to people, and this is something I try to tell myself every day, it's just like, try to not take life so seriously. Like, it doesn't need to be so serious. Like, it's okay to have a little fun in life. It's okay to let go a little. It's okay to be a little crazy. And I feel like you'd learn a lot more about yourself if you just kind of unhinged once in a while.
Right.
Because just push yourself a little more to the max either way, and then you just notice stuff about yourself that you never I used to like put it like picket fence it that I was like the biggest introvert, and then I pushed myself a little and realized I wasn't. I really am not. I actually make friends quite easily. It's very easy for me to go up to people and talk to them now. And it's all because this one day I just pushed myself to be like, I refuse to sit in this corner by myself anymore. I'm just going to do it. And then I did it, and I realized that the only thing I was scared of was people not talking back to me, which isn't even a problem. Because if you talk to somebody, they're gonna talk to you as well. They're gonna talk back to you. So yeah, so like, stop taking life too seriously. I think that would be my biggest thing. Like, one of the, like, I think it was actually in this movie. It's a really funny movie. I don't know if you have seen it. It's called Zombieland. If you don't like the horror genre.
This is clearly not for me, but yes, please tell us.
So in the movie Zombieland, the protagonist, he has a bunch of little rules to surviving Zombieland. And one of the rules he had was enjoy the little things. Oh, wow. And it's like this post-apocalyptic world, and like a bunch of craziness is going on. A lot of your close friends and family are dead. Oh, but wow. you gotta find those little moments in the day. Like, there's little moments where you can just be like, hey, like, oh, hey, look, it's a flower that's just growing out of the concrete. Just enjoy it. Like, that's all it is. Like, even in everything, like, especially like now in the pandemic, like the doom and gloom and everything, like I go through so many days where it's just like so many university assignments and everything, and I'm just like in the pits of depression. And then I like get like, I'll see like a random cat video on Instagram, and then my whole day is like taking a 180.
No, that's all amazing. It is. No, that's amazing. And I agree. I think that's a lesson I've kind of learned later in life. I think the fact that, don't take yourself too seriously. In fact, there's this really interesting quote by Octavia Spencer, if I remember correctly. I think she said this during the Oscars, when I think she won an award for, I think, Best Supporting Actress, where she was basically saying, you can't think you're the best thing since sliced bread. Because there will be, 100 other, like, Jessica Chastains or Emma Stones, who will be the best thing since sliced bread. So the only thing you can really do is, believe in yourself, keep going at it, and, take it seriously, but don't take it too seriously either. Yeah. Which I thought was a very, beautiful way of putting that across, because it's true. You really don't know how life is going to go. The only thing you can do is just keep taking your chances, keep going at it. And have fun along the way. Don't, take the entire burden of the world. That's true. Again, easier said than done. Everyone has their learning curve with this, for sure. But
for sure. Even for me, I'm just like, I say it, like, they say they practice what you preach, and I say I enjoy the little things, but there are definitely some days where I just want to burn the whole world down. So it happens, but you gotta like push past all of the negativity and be like, no, today is gonna be a good day regardless of what happens.
Definitely. And on that happy, positive note, we have now come to the end of the interview for episode 1 of the Closet Writer Chronicles. Thank you so much, Megha, for being here. It's been so lovely talking to you. I've had so much fun recording this. I can't wait for everyone else to hear this conversation.
Oh gosh, I forget that other people are going to listen to this. But no, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been amazing. I always love when you do like all these creative things, and then I get to be a part of it, and it's just awesome. It's amazing.
Thank you so much. So that was my conversation with Megha Vasudevan. I had a lot of fun recording this episode. We spoke about books, films, philosophy, life, the works really. Closing this episode with 3 poems written and narrated by Megha. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next week with a new guest and a new chronicle to share. Talk soon!
This first piece is called Crescendo. Soft melodies played amongst the pitter-patter of rain. Sometimes the sky opens up just to feed her pain. Tapping against the window like her soul against her battered heart. The crescendos kept coming, with light and thunder a counterpart. From lights under set still, a room filled with red, mirrored by drink and empty thoughts, a sudden cold invaded her bed. Her heart jittered suddenly, awakened by the howling skies. Sleep all but forgotten now. Another night lost to soft cries. Uninvited. There's a town in your mind, little lamb. There's a place you go for comfort. It's magic and stardust and damn, maybe even a little bit of camembert. You love that place, don't you? It's such a great escape from reality so often blue, covered in so much red tape. That town in your mind, little lamb, while it protects what you fear, understand that it's just a scam, keeping you from the reality of here. Here and now is where it matters. Rise up and get uncomfortable. Some fairy tales must shatter. Privilege has no place at this table. So put on your masks and step up to the battle. This last piece is an excerpt of a book that I will probably never write. He slithered into her waking body, gasping at a familiar warmth. Heady breaths laid upon glistening skin, trapped by nuzzled limbs. Oh, how she wondered, to be consumed by his lust and devoured by desire, tongued by flesh and passionate words. Release was all but quick, and then they started all over again, and again, and yet again. Ah, but what beautiful fantasies the wanting soul concocts upon the unsuspecting mind. What desirable words spoken in hushed tones, inhaled by familiar musk and brushed onto skin erupting in goose flesh. What a remarkable trip indeed.